And now, direct from Las Vegas, it's Football Forecast Weekly.
Hi, I'm Trip Mitchell, and welcome to another edition of Football Forecast Weekly, where each week we give you the winners so you can pad your bankroll. In just a second, we're going to check in with Dennis down in Las Vegas, but first, let's talk about the college weekend we've got. This is rivalry weekend. I grew up in the Midwest. Michigan, Ohio State was the game. Michigan's not lived up to their part of the bargain. Ohio State looks to go undefeated one more year. We'll see if Urban Meyer can get into that Final Two. I don't think he will. The two big games that I'm excited about are in Alabama and in the Southeast. Let's talk about the Alabama game first. Alabama, number one in the nation, Auburn. Auburn has come back from that disastrous season a couple years ago, and they are playing very well. They're going into this game anywhere from there are four in the nation. You know, they're going to go in getting a lot of points here. This should be a very interesting game. Now, I know this is insane, but I've been following football for 45 years, and the Sports Illustrated cover curse is in play right now. You remember Oregon a couple weeks ago? Quarterback on the cover, they lose. A.J. McCarron, last week's cover kid. I don't want to say anything, but Dennis, your thoughts on that. And then the other game, South Carolina, Clemson. This should be a great matchup as well. So two great games down in the Southeast. Other games are going to be fun to watch. We're not going to talk to them about on this show. Include USC and UCLA. I mentioned Ohio State, Michigan, and you got Washington State. Just a great weekend for college football. Dennis, give us your thoughts on those two Southeastern matchups.
Well, thank you, Trip, and happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there, and welcome to Bet Central here in Las Vegas. First of all, it's the time of the year to count your blessings, and I must say I'm very thankful for Trip Mitchell and the great job he's done hosting this show all year long. Also, very thankful for Lee Sorensen. He's the brains behind the operation at the studio, and without him, none of this would work. I want to send out a special thank you to my daughter, Mindy, who has helped me immensely with the social marketing, which I know nothing about, and also Zach Rice for his assistance. And to my wife, Cindy Tobler. I couldn't have done any of this without her. She's always supportive and lends a hand whenever I need it and help make things work. So thank you to everyone, and I am most thankful to be back in Las Vegas now as my full-time employment locale. I can't say that it wasn't fun traveling around the Caribbean and Latin America for those 10 years, but I must say, not having to leave Vegas unless I want to is really what it's all about, and I love being home. There's a lot of benefits to living here in Las Vegas. This week, Thanksgiving week, my nephew Brant Tobler is headlining at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club at the MGM Hotel on the Strip. So his career is flying high, and he is one terrifically talented comedian. If you ever get a chance, check out Brant Tobler. And I hope he's around for Thanksgiving dinner. Also in town this weekend is our favorite friends, the Jennifer Keith Quartet. They play at the Chandelier Bar at the Cosmopolitan this week, and we'll be there to take in their excitement too. So between the Comedy Club and the Chandelier Bar at the Cosmo and a great family Thanksgiving at home, it's wonderful to be here in Las Vegas. So now let's take a look at the football for this upcoming weekend. Alabama on the road to play Auburn. Finally, they play a tough team that could present a challenge. The last big matchup they had was early in the season against A&M. And since they won that game, they've been sitting on top of the polls, but playing some weak competition. They go to Auburn this week for this rivalry week matchup, and Tripp's right about these rivalry week games. You will see a lot of upsets here, and it is an exciting time of the year. Anyway, Alabama, 10.5-point road favorite in this matchup. I believe Auburn has overachieved a bit, and they probably are going to be up against it when they run into this good Alabama squad. Too much defense here. I'm going to take Alabama and lay the 10.5 points in this matchup, and we'll see what happens when they get to the SEC championship game. The second matchup this week is another huge rivalry from South Carolina. Clemson Tigers take on South Carolina at South Carolina, and the Gamecocks are favored by 5.5 points in this matchup. Well, we all know that Clemson came highly rated during the early part of the season, and Taj Boyd was the talk of the Heisman race, but he fell flat on his face when they were killed by Florida State. And honestly, the ACC conference is probably only the 7th or 8th best conference in the league or in the country. So it really doesn't matter much about what you achieve in the ACC. You're not going much further than that up the rankings. Anyway, it looks to me like they're overmatched here. South Carolina has kind of underachieved themselves this year, and it doesn't make them very happy. And this is one game where they can really blow it out and fix their season. So I look for South Carolina to put on some strong defense, and it seems like Taj Boyd isn't quite as good as everybody predicted he would be. Even though all the records are there, he's weak competition he's played against. So I'm going to take the Gamecocks in this matchup and lay the 5.5 points. Two favorites in college action this week: Alabama to remain #1 and South Carolina to move up the list. Back to you, Trip.
Hey, Dennis, thanks so much. And, just on a personal note, when I was a kid growing up, Michigan, Ohio State was always so great. But then I'd watch the USC-UCLA game, and I noticed that it was always 75, 80 degrees, sunny with beautiful cheerleaders. That didn't affect me at all as a young lad growing up. I wanted to go to USC, I'll guarantee you. Unfortunately, they needed guys with a little bit more speed than I had, but you win some and you lose some. Let's talk about the big matchup this weekend. A rematch of the game 2 weeks ago where Kansas City now, after dropping 2, is in a must-win situation against the Denver Broncos. Now, the Denver Broncos, all you can say about their performance last week was a total implosion. You are a team that's playing to win the Super Bowl, and you can't hold on to a lead like that in New England. Everything went wrong for them, and it was a very interesting game. A lot of people say the game of the year, but Denver's got to get their act together. Kansas City coming off a gunslinging loss to San Diego last week. This is a super important game for them, coming off 2 losses in a row. The losing team here is going to have lost 2, and that momentum-wise is going to be very difficult. And who's the team that's smiling right now? New England Patriots. They got Gronk back. They've got a passing attack going again, and they're looking very good after that. So this is the most important game of the week. It'll be the highest viewed. Dennis, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, Trip, you're absolutely right. Anything and everything can happen in the NFL this time of the year, hence the big road wins by the 2 worst teams in the league. And you can look for that to happen the remainder of the season as these teams are worn out, injured, have something to play for, don't have anything to play for. They're worried about their contracts, they're worried about their statistics, so don't be surprised what happens in the NFL. The first matchup this week is the game that you all know we're going to talk about, and that's Denver at Kansas City. Denver coming off of a big-time loss, blowing a huge halftime lead at the Patriots. And I guess we know who's better between Brady and Manning. Manning looked like a whipped pup sitting on the sideline there. And if it's cold in Kansas City on Sunday, you can bet he's going to have his problems again because he's proved he's only a fair-weather quarterback. And Kansas City, we predicted last week on the show, both Tripp and I, that San Diego may come out of there with a win, and that they did. So getting the 4.5 points was a huge bargain in that matchup. And it just goes to prove that Kansas City also, a little overrated. They had some big breaks go their way early in the season. They're now 9-2, and they face the vaunted Broncos to see who's going to come out of the West with the division lead. And I look for Denver to win this game handily. Denver's a 4-point favorite. I think Peyton Manning will suck it up and get the job done. You know, 2 weeks ago when they played at Mile High, Denver's offensive line was very beat up and Kansas City's defense was being promoted as one of the best in the league. They never laid a finger on Manning in that game, and if it works out that way this week, Denver will run away from Kansas City because Kansas City does not throw the ball down the field, and they do not try to take any big shots, and they will not be able to play from behind. So take the Broncos -4 in the first matchup. The second matchup is probably the best game of the week, and that'll be on Monday night. The highly touted Saints, which we have highly touted all year long on this show, go up against the Seattle Seahawks in that terrible stadium of theirs in Seattle. Seattle's a huge 6-point favorite in this matchup, and frankly, I don't know why. I think the Saints are going to be able to score just as easily against Seattle as they have most every other team in the league. And on the other side of the ball, it looks like Rex Ryan's defense, or Rob Ryan's defense down there in New Orleans, is paying dividends. because they've played very well. And I think maybe he's fooled every other team when they watch the films from previous years, because he plays a four-man line a lot of the time, and the Saints never did that before. Anyway, in this game, it could be a shootout depending on the weather. 6 points is too many for Seattle to lay at home on this one. I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints. So the NFL plays this week, the Denver Broncos -4 and the New Orleans Saints +6. And we'll be back again next week with our NFL update, which we will have for the next few weeks since the college games are moving to the end of the schedule. And then we'll be back with a great big bowl game special in the middle part of December covering the bowl games. So stick with us right here on Football Forecast Weekly, and you'll be glad you did. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Dennis Tobler, out.
And Dennis, thank you so much for that good information. Speaking of good information, your network of pros around the country have given us some great information this year, allowed us to make some good money, and to buy a little bigger turkey this weekend. Speaking of turkeys, I'm going to be watching the Lions in that first game. How did they lose to Tampa Bay last week? Coach Schiano should have been fired, and now all of a sudden, after a couple wins in a row, he's got Tampa turned around. It's funny how things work in the NFL. Speaking of working in the NFL, Dennis Tobler, that's your man. He'll give you the winners all the way through. For our entire production crew here at Football Forecast Weekly, we're wishing you and your family a great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time.